Welcome back to another episode of Hidden Evil. For those of you who are new, I'm Tanner.
And I'm Cole, and today we have an insane case to discuss with you guys.
Absolutely, and we're just going to jump right in. Now, this story takes place in Maysville, just a small town right outside of Salida, Colorado. Suzanne Morphew was 49 years old when she went missing on Mother's Day back in 2020, when she allegedly went for a bike ride and never returned.
Now, Suzanne Morphew was known to be a very active woman. She grew up in Indiana, but later moved to Colorado, where she got into mountain biking. So she was always physically fit.
Now, Suzanne's husband, Barry Morphew, was an avid hunter and he was also a business owner. On May 9th, to Barry, the night that him and Suzanne had the day before she went missing was one of the best nights that he has ever had with Suzanne. They apparently went out to eat and then came back home and had sexual relations and then shortly went to bed after. Now, when Barry said he woke up the next morning, he immediately started to get ready for work, and he said Suzanne was asleep laying in bed before he left the house.
Now, the next day, on Mother's Day, Suzanne Morphew's daughters were on a camping trip, which I found very odd considering it's Mother's Day. I mean, the last place I'd want to be is somewhere where my mother's not.
Right.
But it is what it is. Barry Morphew claimed that he texted his wife to say Happy Mother's Day, but he did not receive a reply at all.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Barry then reached out to the neighbor and asked if he can go check on Suzanne because no one could get a hold of Suzanne. And the neighbor did, and Barry asked to see if her bike was still at the house, and he said, no, her bike is not here. Immediately, Barry reported Suzanne as missing to law enforcement.
Which is interesting because not too long later, investigators actually find Suzanne's bike located at the bottom of a ravine not too far from their house.
Weird.
Yeah. And 10 days into the investigation, investigators actually end up finding a spy pen in the master bedroom of the Morphew home. Now, a spy pen is technically, it looks like a basic pen. It just ends up recording audio.
Right.
Now, this pen was given to Suzanne in the hopes of helping her catch her husband, Barry, in an affair. But this plan actually ended up backfiring and catching Suzanne in an affair with a guy named Jeff.
Now, 4 months in, Andrew Mormon, Suzanne's brother, organized his own search. He said he had to do something, anything, and he hoped to find Suzanne alive. The thought of Suzanne possibly being abducted hit the town of Salida hard. Now, the Morphew family wasn't very well known in Salida because Barry and Suzanne actually grew up in Alexandria, Indiana, and they ended up moving to Colorado in 2018, but they met back in high school.
Yes, where Suzanne actually competed for homecoming, and Barry was a typical jock. And the couple ended up marrying in 1994, and later on, Barry ended up having his own landscaping business, and then Suzanne taught middle school for a little bit before she became a full-time mom to two beautiful daughters.
Now, Macy, Suzanne and Barry's youngest daughter, at 16 years old when Suzanne went missing, was enrolled in high school and lived at home. Their other daughter, Mallory, actually attended college not too far from the Morphew family residence, which is said to be the reason why the family moved to Salida, Colorado in the first place.
Now, they also made this move in hopes to bettering their relationship, but the move did not seem to appear to help their relationship at all.
Right.
In fact, Suzanne's sister was actually receiving texts stating that Barry was being abusive towards her mentally and physically. Now, investigators believe where Suzanne's mountain bike was found had to have been staged because her helmet was found a mile away just off of Highway 50. Now, because of this, it appears that Suzanne has been abducted. And that is actually when Barry goes public and makes an announcement pleading for Suzanne's return, which we'll put up. But it's very interesting.
Very interesting.
He actually goes to the location of where her bike was found,
right,
and makes this video.
Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you. We miss you. Your girls need you. No questions asked. However much they want, I will do whatever it takes to get you back. Honey, I love you. And I want you back so bad.
Now, in the early days of the search, Barry actually shared some info with a YouTuber named Tyson Draper, who was secretly recording Barry when they had met up. And Barry actually said that Suzanne possibly could have got attacked by a mountain lion. Because initially, the first night when the search happened, there initially was spottings of mountain lions. Officers even spotted one that walked by the car.
Which is a very odd theory to go with,
Right.
especially when your wife is missing, to assume that it was a mountain lion. I mean, I get that there was a sighting,
Right.
and ultimately that's what he might have thought. But then again, that's not necessarily something I would have want to thought that happened to my wife when she's missing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, he's very quick to jump to that conclusion.
Very quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, authorities started to actually speculate that maybe Suzanne never even went on this bike ride, because investigators ended up finding her hydration system, wallet, ID, keys, and credit cards all in her Range Rover at home. Now, this is something you normally would, some of those items you would take with you when you go on a bike ride.
Yeah, like identity and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, I would.
But even all that, her phone was still missing.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Barry is known to say the same story to everyone. He and Suzanne had an amazing night before the day that she went missing. And the day that she did go missing, Barry got up at 4:30 a.m., got dressed and ready for work, and then ended up driving 3 hours to Broomfield to a job site that he was supposed to go to. While investigators were trying to verify Barry's alibi, they also wanted to focus in on Jeff, the name from the spy pen,
The affair.
the affair.
Now, this man, Jeff, ended up being Jeff Libler. Now, he was a married man with 6 kids living in Michigan. Now, Jeff and Suzanne actually had a fling after high school, but years later, Suzanne ended up reaching back out to Jeff in 2018. Now, the affair started with a message from Suzanne to Jeff stating, "Howdy, stranger." And from that moment, they had talked every single day, nonstop. Now, after Suzanne went missing, Jeff kept quiet until investigators actually came and found him, where he then spoke out about everything relating to him deleting all of his social medias that he used to contact Suzanne. He said he is worried he might lose his job and his family if it ever got out, and he even asked agents, "Am I a target?"
Now, Jeff agreed to having detectives doing a data search on his deleted accounts and have access to passwords and phone records and even his DNA. By looking through the couple's iCloud accounts, detectives were able to determine how serious and intimate Jeff and Suzanne's affair had gotten.
The two actually had talked about moving out of the country to Ecuador and eventually divorcing their current spouses and getting married to each other. Investigators had actually determined that when Suzanne was taking her vacations, she was actually going to meet up with Jeff and spend days with him.
Yes, and Jeff arguably had last communication with Suzanne before she went missing. Get this, the day Suzanne went missing, Jeff and Suzanne have texted each other 59 times. Now, at 2:05 p.m., Suzanne says, quote, "I am just so in love with you." To Jeff's response, which is, "Want to strip down and get naked?" LOL. She then responds saying she will load up her WhatsApp account. Then at 2:11, she says, "Okay, I'm on WA," which is obviously, I'm on my way.
Then at 2:26 p.m., Suzanne gets a text from Barry stating that he was done with work and he was heading home for the day. He never got a response to that text. Barry then texts again, "Did you leave?" ? Investigators also noticed that Barry's phone was pinging at different spots around the house.
Yeah, and we're going to put a picture up just so you guys can see as well.
Now, it's odd because it's showing that he's pinging around his house all over different spots, multiple different spots. Like he's touching every square inch of this house.
Especially those 4 exact points. Now, when investigators confronted Barry with this evidence, he claims that he was shooting chipmunks on his property because they are always a constant nuisance. But when investigators did some deeper digging, there's no evidence of this happening.
Very interesting claim, honestly.
Very.
But there was messages back and forth between Suzanne and Barry before she went missing. Suzanne writes, "I'm done. I could care less what you're up to and what you have been for years. We just need to figure this out civilly."
Sounds like she's ready to leave him.
It sounds like, yeah, she's done. She's over it.
So if he knows this, then this doesn't make sense, because remember the night that he said they had like the best night ever before the day before that Suzanne went missing.
But these are messages
days, like not even 3 days prior.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how she would go from "I'm done" to having intimate relations with him. During the search, investigators find a clear cap tube in the dryer at the Morphew house. What they believe this is a cap for a tranquilizing dart. Now, investigators believe this is what was used to tranquilize Suzanne. When confronted with this evidence to Barry, obviously, Barry said that he actually used a dart gun to tranquilize deers because he loved to sell their antlers illegally. Authorities say the only thing that makes sense is Barry lost it. The authorities say since his daughters were away, he took advantage of the opportunity and got rid of Suzanne and cleaned up the crime scene before they returned.
It sounds plausible.
I agree.
This led investigators to believe that Suzanne and Barry had gotten in an argument that night, led to Barry shooting her with the tranquilizing gun. And when his phone was pinging in different spots throughout the house, they believe this is when he was chasing her, trying to shoot her with the gun. Now, from 2:47 p.m. till 10:17 p.m., Barry's phone goes off into airplane mode. Authorities believe that when Barry's phone went to airplane mode, this is when he was disposing of evidence. So the investigators were actually unable to track Barry's phone, but they were able to tap into his vehicle, which was a Ford truck. When investigators did this, the data from the truck told a different story than what he was telling investigators.
Of course.
Barry was hiding some secrets.
Of course.
The evidence found by doing this is so accurate it could be used in a courtroom against the defendant, actually.
That's crazy.
That's
like,
how accurate it is.
To think that someone can like hack into your car's computer and see how many times like, you know, open your doors or whatever,
Right.
or whatever, like what location you're at. It's just crazy to me. Now, originally, Barry told investigators that he and Suzanne went to bed around 8 p.m. However, the data from the truck says otherwise, because around 9:30, investigators saw that the truck had been moved 96 feet closer to the residence.
Because of this, investigators believe that this is when he lured Suzanne's body into his truck and drove to the drop site in Broomfield shortly after 5 p.m. on Mother's Day, nearly 150 miles from Salida.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. He also changed his original story of him seeing Suzanne that morning on Mother's Day. He actually said he didn't see her at all and could no longer give a description of what she was wearing, which piques my interest because if you spent the night with her, you're having a great time, you go to bed with her.
Yeah.
Even if you can't, like, how do you not recall what she's wearing? I mean, I get it's days later, even months maybe.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I feel like it's such a specific event that's happening in your life, you would remember some of those details.
And that's one of the things that was really frustrating that I read today, was that no one knew what Suzanne was wearing. So when they were looking for a missing person, they didn't know what clothing they were looking for because Barry couldn't give a description, which I agree is very odd. Like, you and I know what we're wearing when we go to bed next to each other. So it's weird, you know. But after that, he says he drives to Broomfield that morning, which isn't the truth at all. From the data on the truck, it shows Barry driving a mile west in the opposite direction of Broomfield, and then turning the truck around and then driving to Broomfield.
Which is very interesting because you remember how the bike helmet was only a mile away from the residence. That mile was in the west direction off of Highway 50, the same way Barry drove.
See, 2 + 2 is 4.
He then changed his story and said he saw a herd of elk and decided to follow them because he was an avid hunter. He also said he saw the elk at 4:30 a.m. However, he also stated he woke up at 4:30 a.m. So now his stories are kind of clashing. They're not making sense.
Which is it, Barry?
Yeah, the storylines aren't adding up.
Now, investigators also found out that between the hours of 3:25 a.m. and 3:48 a.m., Barry's truck doors had been opened and closed more than 80 times.
Which is just insane. I mean, what are you doing that you're
Within a span of like 20 minutes, a little over 20 minutes.
Yeah. That's
Like,
insane.
Yeah, I don't even think with groceries, we don't even open our doors that much. His phone was also registered in 210 locations that night, whereas the previous nights before, they were registered in 0 to 2 locations, which is, I'd say, normal for your home to be registered, you know? 210? What are you doing?
He's all over the place.
Yeah.
Barry then says on Mother's Day he went to Broomfield to his job site and booked a room at the Holiday Inn nearby to get some rest. However, surveillance footage says otherwise. Another thing proving him wrong. Secretly conducted by the Colorado FBI, it turns out that day, Barry was found in several different locations where he can be seen disposing of trash bags in 5 different dumpsters.
Interesting.
Right after all this is happening.
Yeah, very weird. Okay, this I find actually pretty funny because when confronted with this evidence, Barry said that he had gathered trash from his truck, but didn't want to pay for the trash service in Salida. So he brought it down to Broomfield with him and threw it away in the dumpsters down there. And that was his reasoning behind everything. However, when investigators looked at his truck, it was still super messy, which we'll insert a photo.
Which is a little crazy because how much trash are you accumulating in your truck to use 5 trash bags worth? To use 5 trash bags or to go to 5 dumpsters is saying that you have a lot of trash in your truck.
In your truck.
And then for them to still see your truck dirty?
Right.
What were you getting rid of that? Like, I'm confused. Did you stop halfway through the cleaning process?
Right.
Like, how bad was this truck?
Exactly. That's what I'm wondering because I don't even think I've ever pulled 5 bags of trash out of my car.
No. Now, each time that Barry was recorded dumping trash, he was in a different outfit. It turns out when Barry left his room in the Holiday Inn, it actually reeked of chlorine and bleach. So not only is he going to multiple different dumpsters and dumping trash.
He looks very suspicious right now.
Yeah, he's now wearing a different outfit to each place.
Yeah.
And this is on the same day.
You see, yeah. The day that she went missing.
Now, when confronted with this, Barry claimed they just cleaned the pool and that's why the whole place smelled of chlorine and bleach.
Well, that was quickly shut down because it was the height of the pandemic. It was 2020, and there was no way that the pool was even open. Now, with this being said, the pool obviously hadn't been open, like I said, or cleaned for weeks due to COVID. Now, Suzanne and Barry obviously moved to Salida, Colorado to be closer to their daughter that was in college, but they also moved to try and help their marriage. Unfortunately, like we said earlier, this did not help their marriage, and I'll insert some text messages up that you guys can read that Suzanne actually sent to Barry that were captured from Barry's phone during the times that investigators were able to track his cell phone.
Leading back to the interviews with Barry, in one interview, he actually talks about how Suzanne was definitely not drinking that night, the night that he claimed that they had a great time. And then he said he couldn't remember. Then in one interview after that, he also says that she was drinking all day and that she had a horrible alcohol problem and a drug problem.
Which is out of nowhere.
Which was, completely random. No one else has ever stated this, even her friend's family.
Right.
So which one is it, Barry? And then a search was done at the residence on May 23rd, where investigators could see that his blade on his Bobcat looked to be freshly replaced. Search dogs also noticed a smell on the top of the family trailer. However, both things were ruled out to having nothing to do with Suzanne's disappearance, which really helped in his defense a lot.
Yeah. Now, however, despite all these, on May 5th, 2021, Barry was arrested and charged for first-degree murder of his wife, Suzanne Morphew. He was also charged with tampering with physical evidence, possession of a weapon, and attempting to influence a public servant. He also will be charged for filing an election ballot in Suzanne's name. Later on, he claimed that he didn't know that was illegal to file an election ballot in someone else's name and just paid the $600 fine, and all charges were dropped. Now, following Barry's first hearing in September, investigators brought up the fact that Barry wasn't even supposed to be in Broomfield for work, because that project was not set to start for at least another week. He also didn't bring any of the necessary tools to start working on the project besides 2 shovels.
Days after Suzanne was reported missing, the arrest affidavit showed that Barry refused to take a polygraph test. Also, during the hearing, text messages were shown and conversations back and forth between Susan and Barry. Suzanne is actually pleading to leave her husband, and Barry was not having any of it. These text messages showed just how scared Suzanne actually was of Barry. Barry's defense team actually brought up the fact of the hotel room smelling like bleach, but they also pointed out that they brought in a cadaver dog to try and find any signs of remains. They found nothing. These dogs also did not detect any remains in Barry's truck as well. They also testified that Barry's dart gun was broken during this time that Suzanne was murdered.
That's right, and the biggest piece of evidence the defense had found was foreign DNA. It was found on Suzanne's bike, her helmet, and the glove box of her car. None of the DNA matched Barry. The DNA of the car, however, didn't match the DNA on the bike and helmet. Crime investigators matched the DNA to 3 unsolved SA cases, which was huge for the defense. They never did the due diligence of following up on these DNA profiles.
The DNA being different on the glove box wasn't shared with the defense until this hearing. So basically means the prosecutors withheld exploratory evidence or evidence that benefits the defendant in the defense. After 4 days, the prosecutors claimed that the proof wasn't evident, basically saying there isn't enough evidence of Barry to be convicted of the murder of Suzanne Morphew. The judge didn't rule in his favor quickly.
On September 17th, 2021, enough probable cause was found to move forward with the trial. The judge also announced that Barry would have a post bail set at $500,000, cash only. At no surprise, Barry posted bail right away. On September 20th, he can be seen freely walking out of the jail with his 2 daughters right next to him by his side. Even though he was released on bond, he still had to wear an ankle monitor and will have consequences if he reached out to anyone involving anything to do with the case. So then between September of 2021 and April of 2022, Barry and his defense prepared for what they thought would be a lengthy trial.
But just 9 days before the trial was set to begin, the prosecutors filed a motion to dismiss all charges against Barry without prejudice, which means they took the charges away, but they also could put them back on Barry at any time. But until this day, Barry is a free man in Colorado.
Right.
Then on September 22nd, 2023, Suzanne's remains were actually found in the town of Moffett, about 45 minutes away from the family's residence.
That's right. And the weird thing is, this never was a place of interest to investigators.
No, this wasn't discussed. It wasn't brought up.
Exactly.
Like, Moffett was not on,
No, they searched like right by the residence for Suzanne because she was known to go mountain biking.
Plus, the bike and the helmet were found nearby the residence.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. Throughout the whole 3-year search, this was never a place in their minds. To our current knowledge, Barry was not in the Moffett area at all on the day that Suzanne went missing. The evidence proves he could not have been there at the time of the murder because he was driving to Broomfield, which is Denver, over 150 miles away from Salida. Now, in order for him to be convicted, investigators have to make some type of connection to Barry. And right now they have nothing because of Suzanne's body being found in Moffett. Mm-hmm. What investigators believe happened to Suzanne was 1, she was strangled, 2, she was shot, or 3, she was tranquilized.
And a statement was released by Barry's attorney following Suzanne's remains being found, stating, Barry is with his daughters, and they are struggling with immense shock and grief after learning today that their mother and wife, whom they deeply love, was found deceased. Now, that is pretty devastating, but Moffett is actually known to be called the Boneyard because so many remains have been found there. Now, again, it is odd that she is found there. There's not a whole lot to go into this.
Right. Following the finding of the remains of Suzanne, Barry filed a $15 million lawsuit against prosecutors for wrongfully charging him. Now, just days before the 2nd year of Suzanne's murder, Barry and his daughter speak out.
Now, after watching this interview, to me personally, it just seems like they're more worried about their dad being free than they are about their own mother being found dead, essentially, after being missing. Like, their minds aren't on the fact that their mother is gone. It's the fact that their father's now a free man.
Not only that, but like I also think that Barry was really not showing any emotion. If anything, I feel like his daughters were, and he was just kind of in the middle. You know, they weren't like really connected in a way.
Exactly.
Now, let's reiterate. To this day, Barry is a free man in Colorado. Do you guys agree with this? We want to know what you guys think. But remember to be kind to everybody. Don't show hate anywhere. And unfortunately, that is all we have for you guys today. I know it was a short one, but we'll be back next week with a brand new case for you guys. Also, most likely there will be a part 2 on this case because there is still a lot to unfold here. And like Cole said earlier, the charges were without prejudice, so they could be put back onto Barry at any time.
So yes, definitely a part 2. There's still a lot to be discovered and unveiled for this case, and hopefully we can figure out exactly who or what happened to Suzanne Morphew. But until then, we want to thank all of our Hidden Evil fam. And if you aren't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, click the like, and share this video with all your friends and family. We would appreciate it so much. It does help out our podcast quite a bit.
Absolutely.
And we do post a new case every single week. And if you'd like to follow any of our socials, they will all be listed down below in the links.
I'll also put them up on the screen during editing.
And until then, I'm Cole.
I'm Tanner.
And we'll see you next week.